I had found a parenting class. And, when you're going through a separation, there's a lot of negative energy, right? You're fighting, you're not you're not being reasonable. And so the one thing that a lot of parents do is they use the kid as a pawn. And what I wanted to do was make sure that we were doing the right thing by our son. And so I found this parenting class, and the parenting class really told us how detrimental it is for the children to go back and forth every couple of days. That's kind of the standard thing. Sunday through Wednesday, Thursday through Saturday, right? And that's more for the parent. And I'm not here to judge anybody's, agreement with their co-parent, but this is just something that my ex-husband and I had learned.
Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Before we start the next conversation, I want to invite you to check out my amazing book, The Gift Inside, a powerful guide for healing your body, mind, and soul. Reclaim your strengths and awaken your true potential. Whether you are navigating heartbreak or simply seeking deeper fulfillment, this book offers the tools to turn your struggles into triumphs. It is time to unlock the gift within you. Available now on Amazon, or you can check it out on my website www.irinashehovtsov.com. To Single Parent Success Stories. Today guest is Shannon Miller Lutz. She is a transformational coach who helps others break generational patterns, step into their power, and create lives they are proud of. She is real, resilient, and brings both wisdom and heart to everything she does. And she is a former single parent of one, joining us from St. Petersburg, Florida. Welcome, Shannon. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, Irina. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. So please share with us, how did you become a single parent?
Well, I was the one that wanted the divorce. I know some people listening, maybe they were the ones that were surprised that their spouse wanted the separation and the divorce, but I was the driving factor. And so the week after my son turned 3, I moved out of our home. I had been with my ex-husband since I was 19 years old. And at this point, I was 32, 33. So we've been together for a while. But for me, having my son kind of caused an awakening where I saw all the problems that were happening in our marriage. And I just couldn't stay in that toxic relationship. I wanted for us to grow and look at our issues, and he was just like not willing to do that. So I made a decision. It was really hard. I was full of guilt, like many of us are at that point, whether you're in my position of being the one that wants the divorce or the other one. There's just a lot of guilt around it. And my parents had divorced when I was the same age, 3. So I was sad and disappointed that I was continuing that pattern.
Sometimes it's difficult, especially when you grow up in something. We tend to maybe unconsciously repeat the same kind of life that we knew. We don't want to do that, but kind of
Right.
our subconscious sometimes manifests that.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges you faced when you were a single parent?
Well, like I said, our son was 3. He's still a baby at 3. They're starting to become little people, but they are still very dependent on their parents. And for me, I was still breastfeeding. So that was the biggest challenge for me. And some people may be listening to this and judging like breastfeeding at 3, completely natural people. He was only doing it at night. However, I had never been away from him overnight before in his whole life. And so before I moved out, I went and visited my dad he lives in both Chicago and Michigan. I think I went to Michigan and just spent a weekend just so I could practice being away from him for a couple of nights. And um, because he was only nursing at night, it's not like I had to pump or anything like that. So I was okay for a couple of days. And I got home and I was like, please, please take this milk out. But what we had done, my ex-husband and I, is I had found a parenting class. And, when you're going through a separation, there's a lot of negative energy, right? You're fighting, you're not you're not being reasonable. And so the one thing that a lot of parents do is they use the kid as a pawn. And what I wanted to do was make sure that we were doing the right thing by our son. And so I found this parenting class, and the parenting class really told us how detrimental it is for the children to go back and forth every couple of days. That's kind of the standard thing. Sunday through Wednesday, Thursday through Saturday, right? And that's more for the parent. And I'm not here to judge anybody's, agreement with their co-parent, but this is just something that my ex-husband and I had learned. And so what we decided to do was do a week at a time. And that way he could be at one of the homes for a longer period of time and kind of get into the groove. And during that week, the parent that didn't have custody that week would pick him up from daycare Tuesdays and Thursdays, have dinner with him, and then bring him back to the other parent so that at least we could see him during that week. And again, those were the 2 nights I was like, please, nurse, right? And that worked. We felt like we were putting him first, and there was still behavior issues, and I'm sure a lot of parents can notice when it's transfer day. The kids will kind of pull away emotionally from you and start to act up a little bit. And then when they come back to you during your custody time, it takes a day or two for them to get, comfortable. It is really hard on them. And so eventually what we did was by the time he was in, I think, middle school, we decided, hey, it's 2 weeks a month. Let's just have him be at one house for 2 weeks and the other house for 2 weeks, because that's better for him. And so I think the biggest challenge to answer your question was for me, I had never been away from him overnight, so that was really hard. Um, the letting go, the letting go was really hard. And just creating this new normal and being able to not only deal with my emotions over the grieving of my marriage and, you know, having to do everything, pick up, drop offs, all the stuff, but also helping my son deal with his emotions. At 3, they don't really have a lot of vocabulary and they don't have a lot of experience dealing with strong emotions. And so helping him when he's just using me as a punching bag is what he did. He just hit me a lot and I would just grab his hands and pull him down and say, we don't hit. And it's really hard to stay calm in those moments because you're emotional too. So I think the hardest part for me was really the emotions around everything, everybody's emotions.
If you go back in time, would you do anything differently?
Oh, wow. I don't think I would. It wasn't perfect, but that's when we learn when we're going through challenging times. I might get a little emotional. My son's going to be 30 this year, you guys. And
No
he
way.
was, so
You
it's,
look so young.
I thank you. I have a lot of space from that time. I've lived a lot of life, but it's still, you know, hard. It's hard. So would I do anything differently? I don't know. I don't know if I really would. I don't think I would because I learned a lot about myself and how to parent.
Looking back, like you wouldn't be the person you are today, have you not had the experiences that you have had.
Exactly. And one of the things that we talked a little bit about patterns, right? So with my parents being divorced when I was the same age, um, I knew that I didn't want to, they didn't even co-parent. I did not want to act like they did So they held up a model of what not to do in the situation. That's the gift that I eventually came to realize was they gave me a gift of how not to do this. They have both been married multiple times. My mother is on her fourth marriage. My father is on his third. And they've both been with these partners for 20 plus years, long time. But they still talk bad about each other. I'm like, oh my God, guys, come on. Like, it's been 57 years. Like, get over it, right? So I wanted I wanted to have a different relationship with my son's father. And I worked really hard on creating a co-parenting relationship. And he was open to it. He got remarried rather quickly. Um, and they had two more children. And the, his current wife, she didn't like me for a long time. Now we're friends, but she didn't like me for a long time. I don't know why. I hurt him. I'm a threat. I don't know. I don't know what it was. So anytime she wasn't around, we were able to like sit together at his basketball games, right? But if she was there, he wouldn't really. So it took years and years and years, guys, years. But now we spend Thanksgiving together every year in South Carolina, where our son lives. He's there with his wife and their two kids. I'm there with my husband. The first Thanksgiving that our son was in college, I spent it at my ex-husband's house, and my ex-in-laws were there. My current in-laws were there, right? It was it was this crazy version of Brady Bunch. It was just like crazy. Um, but it was all because of our love for our son. And that's what we have to remember is, you know, look, the marriage is over. We can stop fighting, but let's put the kids first.
I love that. We don't have to follow kind of society's idea of what normal is. We can
Yeah.
get to create our own way that works
Yeah.
for our family. So,
Yes.
wow, that's incredible that you were able to pull that off.
Well, like I said, it wasn't like overnight, it was, I want to say by the time he graduated high school. So a long time, 15 years. But we were all at my ex-husband's house, because he had a pool at his house for the graduation. So, we eventually got there.
Thank you. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
Mm. Well, I know from my journey, being the mother of a son, I felt it was very important for me to teach him how to express his feelings. I think it's important that we let them know that um, yes, this is hard and life is hard, and we have each other to support each other and to love each other, but we're not going to push everything down and ignore it. And maybe you're the mother of a daughter and that's not an issue, like because girls are much more, emotional and able to talk. For me, with my son, I felt like it was really important for me to have honest conversations with him. So, for example, here's a great example. So, when he was 5, one morning he called me Stinky. And the nickname is a whole thing. His dad nicknames everybody. Everybody has a nickname. And my son is the same way. So he called me Stinky one morning, and I just kind of ignored it. And then the next morning he called me Stinky. And I said, "Why are you calling me Stinky?" And he goes, "Well, your breath smells." And I said, "It's called morning breath. And you don't smell like a rose either when you wake up. Everybody has it. And you're hurting my feelings. And I really don't want to be called Stinky anymore." And it was literally in this tone. Now he's 5. Like a lot of people talk to kids like in their baby talk. I always talk to him like he was an adult. I was like, dude, here's the situation, right? Like I never said, "Oh, let's your wee wee, it's your penis." Okay. Like we're gonna use adult words, right? So so he listened and he changed Stinky to Binky. Now, a lot of people, that's what they call their pacifier. And so I joke it's because I was literally his Binky, but that's not why he came up with the name. It was because he just kind of shifted Stinky to Binky. And to this day, he calls me Binky. And it melts my heart when he's like, Binky. And I'm like, oh, anything you want. What do you want? Right? He knows how to get me. Oh, Binky. And he had a really good friend growing up that they would call me like different iterations of Binky, like the Binkster, Sir Bink-a-Lot. Like they came up with all these names. But it was really about, we're going to have, you're hurting my feelings. Please don't do that. I think that's important.
What I love that, you talk to him like an adult, like another human being instead of, childish things and stuff
Well,
like
and
that.
it's so
And
funny because from the time he was little, he's an old soul. So he never called me mommy. It was always mom or Binky. And he never had like the high pitched voice. Like, like when you call someone's house and their young son answers and it sounds like a girl. Never. He always had a low gravelly voice. Like he's always been this little adult. It's so funny. So it was super easy because he was, he wasn't like, oh, he didn't sound like Mickey Mouse when he talked.
what advice would you give to single parents who are just stepping onto the journey of single parenting?
Well, like I said, this was a long time ago. Um, and I was a single mom for a long time. So I didn't get remarried until he was 14. So I was single for 11 years. And, I was in relationships, but I was a single parent. They weren't a parent. Um, what I'd like to tell people is this is a chapter, and it might feel like it's never going to end. And it's so hard. And how am I going to get through these days? And I'm here to tell you, you will. You will get through this chapter in life. And yes, it's hard. And yes, you're going to find out a lot about yourself. That's the perk, not maybe in the moment, but looking back. And I'm sure you've all heard of the saying, the days are long, but the years are short. It is so true. So it might feel like this is just, it's so hard and it's so hard. And oh my gosh, like I'm never gonna like get out of debt or, have time to myself or whatever. Those are all lies your brain is telling you. It will change. It will change. And you will reflect back and be like, wow, I'm really impressed with myself. Like I did some hard shit. Like, yay me. Like, yay me. So just hang in there. It will change. It will get better. And you'll look back and be really proud of yourself.
Right, you're right. I don't know. I notice as I get older, the time flies so much faster
Yeah.
versus when we were younger,
Yes, exactly.
studying for that test, and now you turn around and another Friday is gone, and now we're already in the middle of April.
Yeah.
Where did the time go?
Yeah. And so really like try to be present. And I know it's hard when you're exhausted. I taught my son when he was, 3, 4, 5, don't bother mom on Saturday, on the weekends, until this is what he called it. This is back when we had clocks, people. Um, he had a little digital clock in his room, and he said, "Oh, I don't bother mom until 9 dot dot 00." And I said, "That's right, 9 dot dot 00." Which I would still love to have slept even longer, right? Exhausted, exhausted. And I would get up and I would go sit on we had a little chair and a half, and we would watch SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents and all that stuff. And I would be like, nodding off, and he was like, Mom, you have to watch it with me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. What I would give to sit in that chair and a half right now with him and watch SpongeBob. Seriously. So try and be present. Try to find the joy in the little moments, because if you're just like, when can this day end? When can I get to sleep? Like you're wishing away your life. And yes, life flies by, but there is a way that you can slow down time, and it's by being present and not thinking into the future all the time. And you and I, as transformational coach, we know this, like how to be present and get out of our head and into our bodies. And it's a challenge at for whether you're a single parent or not, it's a challenge, but there is a way to slow down time and is to be totally in the moment. So when when your kid wants to play with you, like just shift that mindset from, oh, there's a million other things I need to be doing to let me just spend some time, you know? Um, I remember, and I have pictures of this in a photo album because we used to print out photos and put them in albums in the day. But I have a picture of this day. It was like a holiday, like a Martin Luther King holiday or something, and AJ, my son, was with me, and I said, "What do you want to do?" And he goes, "I want to build a truck stop." And I was like, "Okay." We spent all day in our pajamas. Oh, we would have pajama days, yeah. We spent the whole day, and he took all of his little Matchbox trucks and stuff, and we lined them up in the hallway of my apartment. And we played truck stop all day long. It was the best day. I still remember that, 25 plus years later. So just be in the moment. It's hard, but don't wish away the time because eventually they will grow up and they will leave. I see my son twice a year. That's it. Maybe three times if I'm lucky.
That's a great advice. Being in the present and remembering how we used to be when we were kids. We didn't have bills to pay and things to do, but we were present right there in the moment, observing and absorbing everything around us. I love that.
Yeah, and spring
Thank you.
break was like forever, it would just seem like it because you were just in the moment and just not worrying about things. So we have the ability as adults to do that. And it doesn't mean we're just going to not pay our bills, but just choose when you're going to do that and choose when you're going to be present with your loved ones.
Totally. Was there any book that inspired your journey? Anything that helped you along the way when you were a single parent?
Well, I read a lot of books, but I was working mostly on myself, which we do need to do as single parents. What happened? What did I contribute to the end of my marriage? Whether, I was the problem or not. Like I read a lot of codependency books and trying to figure out, okay, I don't want to make this mistake again. Like I said, my parents have been married multiple times. I'm like, I'm only going to have one other one. That's it. Like, I am not going to show up as the same person. So there were a lot of books that I read to work on myself, which I think is super important. But as far as parenting, the one book, and it wasn't really a parenting book, but it's the book that has my heart, is I'll Love You Forever. And it's a book a lot of us get as like gifts when our children are born. Have you ever heard of this book, Love You Forever? Okay, it will break your heart. Some people think it's creepy, but here's the gist of this book. So the book is Love You Forever, and it's a mother and a son, and it shows the different ages. So he's a toddler, and during the day, he's, getting in all sorts of trouble, pulling on the cat's tail or throwing your watch in the toilet or all this stuff. And they're just like a whirlwind of activity. And you're like, oh my God. But then at night, when they're asleep and you tiptoe into their room and you watch them sleeping, and then I made up a song because I'm a singer, so I made up a tune, but it's I love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And then it goes into the next, and it's a picture book. So the next picture is when he's a teenager and he's driving you crazy, blah, 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 all those things. And then you tiptoe in his room when he's sleeping and you think, I love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And and this is where some people think it's creepy. Like, why would you creep in and like, look at your, I'm like, let's confess. We all go in and look at our children sleeping. Okay. We all go in there. I do it now. If I'm on a trip with my son and we're sharing a hotel room and I'm just watching him sleep, I'm just like, so the book goes on. She's now an old woman and her son has moved out and has his own family. And she drives across town with a ladder on her roof. And she climbs in his window and she watches him sleep. And actually in the book, she picks him up and rocks him. It's the sweetest, sweetest thing. Some people take it the wrong way. I am a softie and I'm like, I would literally drive across town, climb in my son's window, and pick him up and rock him, literally. Um, and then at the very, very end, she can't finish the song because she's so old. And he comes to her house and he picks her up and he changes the song to "I love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living. Your mommy, my mommy you'll be." And it just has my heart because that is just, it's the relationship we have with our kids. It doesn't matter how old they are. And I know your children are younger, and a lot of people listening to this, their children are younger. My son will be 30, 30, and he's still my baby. And I will look at him sometimes when I'm visiting him, and I'll get this look on my face. And I'm like, and he goes, "Mom, I'm not 3 years old." I said, "You are to me." He knows the look on my face. He knows how much I love him. He knows that I think the sun shines out his ass. Like, he's not perfect, like, but he can do no wrong. Like, you know. Um, but that book just has my heart because it doesn't matter if they're with us, if they're not with us. That relationship will never end. We will always, always be their mommy. We will always be the one that cared for them and loved them more than anybody else in the world, right? And that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yes, so, so true. Thank you. Thank you for that. It's incredible book.
Oh, and I made the mistake of reading this book to my son. I gave birth at a birthing center. No shock. I breastfed for 3 years. Um, but I got home from the birthing center and I wanted to read him a book. And I read him this book. And you're so hormonal after giving birth. I was like, "Bleh." I was like bawling trying to read this book. And so to this day, like this book just has my heart. It was the very first book I read to him. And it's just him and me. Like, I will drive across town with a ladder and climb in your window and rock you to sleep.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it. How has your career changed as a result of single parenting, or it didn't affect you at all?
Yeah. When I split with my ex, I was working in the mortgage business. I was at a desk, I was a mortgage processor, and I was at a desk 9 to 5. And that job gave me a lot of things. It gave me benefits but there were some days where there wasn't enough work. And I was really good at my job and I could have gotten it done in less time and gone to do, as a single parent, you're like, I've got so much to do. I got to do laundry. I got to go to the grocery store. I got to whatever. Um, and so it really was hard sitting at a desk and knowing that I was paying somebody to raise my child. It broke my heart. And I did it for a number of years, mainly because I don't think I could have been self-employed at that time in my life. I needed more stability. But when AJ turned 11, I left a 6-year long emotionally and verbally abusive relationship. We were not married. Moved out and got a little apartment and got my real estate license. And initially, what I had planned was like I said, I'm a singer. I have a background in the arts. I wanted to do something creative. And HGTV was kind of new. I've been watching it for a year or two. And I was like, oh, I want to be a stager. That's creative. And I thought, where am I going to get my clients? Let me get my real estate license. I'll join a real estate office and those will be my clients. So I got my real estate license and did a couple staging jobs, but found out that I was really good and really enjoyed selling homes. So what was great about being self-employed, because as a real estate agent, you're basically self-employed, was the flexibility. That was what was missing when I had a desk job. So I was able to be home in the afternoon the weeks that I had him. I could arrange to be home, check in with him. What's the plan for homework? And here, get a snack. And then I could either go back out to show houses or I could work at home. And that flexibility really helped a little bit of the guilt, when I didn't have him, because by then we were doing 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And I only lived like 2 miles from my ex. So at that point we were friendly and, he could go back and forth, whatever. But the weeks that I didn't have him, I was balls to the walls. I was like working like crazy. And then the weeks that I had him, I could then come home in the afternoon. So it, I did want to be creative, and I don't think I really cognitively thought about the flexibility as being a number one thing, but it ended up being the number one perk. Um, that I had flexibility to be around, and I could go on the, the field trips and stuff, because I'm sure a lot of your listeners, they're in a 9 to 5 job, and there's so much guilt when you just need to take them to the doctors. Like that you're asking for time off to take them to the doctors, or you're asking time off to be a chaperone on a field trip. There's a lot of guilt, whether or not your boss is, making you feel guilty, or it's just an inside, thought, negative thought and feeling that you're having, that you feel guilty. Um, Guilt is a part of parenthood. We're not going to get away without feeling guilty in some way, but we don't want to be driven by that guilt. So looking back, having that flexibility as a single parent is helps alleviate that guilt a little bit, I think. You can juggle the balls a little bit easier when you have flexibility. You're still juggling for your life, but it's a little easier.
I love that. And you're so right. We do need flexibility. And yeah, and in that regard, you were able to create that with the real estate, which is you get to set your own hours, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people think we don't work very hard and we make a lot of money. But when my business really took off, I was working on average 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. So we work really, really hard. But again, and then as my son's a teenager, he doesn't want me around anyway, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'll go work. Still checking in with you, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. What is your superpower if you had to pick one?
My superpower, I think, is, and how do I word this? My superpower is seeing people. And there's nothing better in this world than being seen for who we are. I think that comes from just being sensitive, learning to trust my intuition, which I had to teach myself to do after I became a mother. We all hear about that mother's intuition. And I would hear that little voice and I would ignore it. And then I'd be like, ooh, that's it. I should be listening to that. So trusting that intuition and trusting that sensitivity. And what I love about society today that I've noticed is women supporting women more than when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, where it was a competition. And so I love just giving compliments to random people when I see them, and I think of something nice, and I'm like, oh, your hair looks beautiful. And I'm like, oh, gosh, thank you. Or like, oh, I really like your outfit. I love people. I love connecting with people, and I love seeing the beauty in them. And I think that has come with age. That's age and wisdom, is being able to be comfortable doing that for other people. I definitely was not able to do that when I was caught up in all my own stuff in my 20s and 30s. But as I've gotten older, I'm here to tell you, ladies, 40s, 50s, and I'm turning 60 this year. Every decade's more and more amazing. Stepping into your power and who you are and knowing who you are. It's awesome.
Thank you. That's incredible superpower to have. Yeah, because people do want to be seen for who they are, and sometimes people wear a lot of masks, and when you find somebody who can really truly see you for who you are, that's an incredible thing to have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Hmm. Well, I think I've touched on a lot. That it's just a chapter in your life, learning how to slow down and really see the beauty in the moments. Um, oh, here's something. A couple of years ago, I saw this, I think on social media, or maybe a friend told me about it. I don't know. But I have a jar now, and I have like these little pieces of paper, And for many years, when something special would happen, I would write it down and I would put, fold a piece of paper, put it in the jar. And New Year's, read them all. Like it's just a reminder of your year. This year, I've been really purposeful about doing something every week, at least one, if not two. Noticing the beautiful things that have happened or a special moment or a special occasion. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, we took a road trip today. It could be, I had an amazing conversation with my child. Um, what a beautiful way to sit at the end of a year and celebrate the good things because our brains are wired to focus on the negative. It's a way of keeping us alive. That's our brain's number one job. So how about we focus on the positive? And this is a great way. You don't have to remember it all. Just write it down on a piece of paper, put it in a jar, and at the end of the year, read it with your family and reminisce and remember all these amazing things that you've been able to notice and accomplish.
It's an incredible thing to do. I also had a guest, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago on the podcast who shared the tradition for around Thanksgiving, but everybody kind of sit down around the table and during every day you write something that you're grateful for. And then around Thanksgiving time, you open the jar and read all those things. Maybe like we don't have a perfect life, but we have so many blessings that we
Yeah.
don't even remember or we take for granted until they
Yeah.
disappear.
And gratitude, like you said, gratitude is a powerful tool. People think it's just like, oh, it's a thing that you should do. It is a tool for mental health. It is a tool to combat depression and anxiety and all the things that we deal with. If you can just be grateful for one thing today. And I taught this to my son, when he was going through a hard time. He's like, Mom, I mean, imagine having a coach for a mom. And I didn't become a coach until 6 years ago. He was an adult, but I was always kind of a coach, a natural coach. But I didn't go to coaching school until 6 years ago. But he said, Mom, I listened to what you said. And, when I have a really hard day, I just think about what I'm grateful for. And I was like, oh, they do listen. That's the thing. They do listen. They may not seem like they're listening, but they listen. So make sure you're saying some good stuff. No pressure.
Yes, you're right. Sometimes you get surprise things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can say that. And oh, no, finally it's coming now from you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing, if you are listening and you have teenagers and they're driving you crazy. Number one, this is a natural part of their maturation, right? They need to break away emotionally because they're going to be breaking away physically soon, right? So there's a reason that this is happening. Doesn't make it easy. My son lost his door for a while at both our houses. It's like, it's not easy. But they do come back and they do start saying back to you what you've been saying. My one of my stepmoms, because I've had multiples. One of my stepmoms, she's still my mom. She said, I wanted nothing to do with you kids from about 18 to 22, and then you came back, and I noticed the same thing. Talking back to patterns where we started, I noticed the same thing with my son. Like I was like, I'm gonna kill him. Someone's gonna die. Someone's gonna die. But then he went away to school. He saw how hard life is, right? And he's like, oh, Mom might know what she's talking about. Wait a minute. And now I'm the one that he calls for life advice. I'm the one. He's like, Mom, I have this issue. What do I do? Dad's the one he calls for sports and boats and fishing and, guy stuff. But Mom's the one that he calls for life advice. He realized I might know what I'm talking about. So if you have a teenager and you're listening to this, you will get through those years. It is difficult, but they will come back and you will fall in love all over again with them.
I love that. Yeah, I do have teenager right now. And another one getting into teenagehood.
It's tough. It's tougher. It's a different tough than toddlers because toddlers are like, it's physical, like you got to run after them all the time. Teenagers, it's tough because it's mental and emotional, and you've got to kind of hold your ground. So it's another type of tough. But again, once you get through this, guys, can I tell you, being an empty nester is amazing. Just hang in there.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I feel like I could talk to you for hours. But we're gonna respect your time as well. If people would like to connect and learn more about you, where would they go?
You can find me on my website, which is SML Coaching. That's my initials for Shannon Miller Lutz. So smlcoaching.com. I have some freebies on there. There's a contact me form if you want to talk more. You can find me on social media either by looking for my name, Shannon Miller Lutz, or SML Coaching. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll include everything in episode notes. I really loved having you on. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey with us. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you so much.